This is Jennifer Bohart from SCC, and in this section we will be performing operations on fractions, beginning with addition and subtraction. Now, when adding and subtracting fractions, the key is to find a common denominator. You can only add or subtract two fractions if they have the same denominator. So looking at these examples, starting with 1/2 plus 1/3, our goal is to rewrite these fractions as equivalent fractions that have the same denominator. So looking at this, 2 and 3 are both factors of 6, so that is going to be our common denominator. So we want to write this problem, 1/2 plus 1/3, as a problem in which the two fractions both have the denominator of 6. So that means we need to find equivalent fractions for each of these. Now, 1/2, if you think about the number 2, 2 times 3 gives you 6. What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. 1 times 3 is 3. So 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6. Do the same thing with the 1/3. 3 times 2 is 6. What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 1 times 2 is 2. So we have our equivalent fractions with the same denominator. Now that we have the same denominator, we just add the numerators. We have 3 plus 2 over 6 gives us 3 plus 2 is 5, 6. Now for part B, we need to do the same thing. Here we are subtracting, which means we still need to find a common denominator. In this case, the common denominator is a number that has both 15 and 12 as factors. That number would be 60. 15 times 4 gives you 60. So what you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. 11 times 4 is 44. 12 times 5 gives 60. So 5 times 5 gives us 25. Now that we have our common denominator, we need to subtract the numerators. 44 minus 25 divided by 60. 44 minus 25 gives us 19 sixtieths. Now we're going to do the same thing for part C and D here, but for part C we have mixed numbers. Now whenever we're working with mixed numbers, whether we are adding, subtracting, or later multiplying and dividing, our first step has to be to rewrite the mixed numbers as improper fractions. So we have 4 3/5. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 3 gives us 23 fifths, minus, do the same thing with 1 and 5/6. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 gives us 11, 6. Now we need to find that common denominator. So we're looking for a number with both 5 and 6 as factors. That number would be 30. 5 times 6 gives us 30. What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. 23 times 6 gives us 138. And same thing with 11 6. 6 times 5 gives us 30. 11 times 5 is 55. Subtracting, 138 minus 55 gives us 83 thirtieths. Now this is an improper fraction, and you may want to rewrite this as a mixed number. So dividing 30 into 83, you get 2 with 23 left over as a remainder, so 2 and 23 thirtieths. For part D, same thing. Here we have 2 minus 8/5. We have to rewrite the 2 as a fraction. So 2, any whole number can be rewritten as that number over 1. So rewriting this as 2 over 1 minus 8/5. Now the common denominator would be 5. So we have 10/5 minus 8/5. 10 minus 8 gives us 2/5. Now example 2, we are multiplying fractions. Now when you multiply two fractions together, the key is to just multiply straight across. You multiply the numerators with the numerators, the denominators with the denominators. So in this first problem, we have 2/3 times 3/4. Multiply the numerators. 2 times 3 gives you 6. 3 times 4 gives you 12. And you always want to look to see if your final answer can be reduced. In this case it can. 6/12 is the same as 1/2. Now before we move on to part B, there is another method that you can use when multiplying fractions. If you notice here, we multiplied straight across and then we had to reduce our answer. You can, when multiplying, reduce the problem first. Let me just rewrite this here. We have 2/3 times 3/4. Now before we multiply, look at the fractions that you're given and see if any of the numerators can cancel with any of the denominators. See if you can reduce any of the numerators with any of the denominators. Looking at this, we have a 3 and a 3. Both 3 and 3 are divisible by 3. When you divide out of 3, you get 1. So I'm going to cross those out and rewrite that with 1. Same thing with the 2 and the 4. Both 2 and 4 are divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So now we have a much simpler problem. Instead of the 2, we have a 1. Instead of the 3, we have a 1 times 1/2. Multiplying that straight across, 1 times 1 is 1, over 1 times 2 is 2. You wind up with the same answer. When multiplying, you can always look to see if you can reduce the problem first. A lot of times it makes the problem a whole lot easier. Now moving on to part B. This is a case where reducing the problem ahead of time will make the numbers at the very least a lot smaller and easier to work with. So looking at these, we have 12 and 48. Both of those are divisible by 12. So 12 goes into 12 once. 12 goes into 48 4 times. The 25 and the 35 are both divisible by 5. 25 divided by 5 is 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. So this becomes 1/5 times 7/4. 1 times 7 is 7. 5 times 4 is 20. The answer is 7/20. Now for part C, again we have a whole number. So before we do any multiplying, any canceling, anything like that, we have to first write the whole number as a fraction. So this is going to turn into 7/8 times 5 over 1. Now there are no factors common to the top and bottom, so we can't do any canceling ahead of time. All we can do is multiply straight across. 7 times 5 is 35. 8 times 1 is 8. Now this improper fraction can be rewritten as a mixed number. This is the same as 4 and 3/8. Part D, here we have two mixed numbers, so before we multiply them we have to turn them into improper fractions. 3 and 1/5 can be rewritten as 16/5 times 1 and 1/9 can be rewritten as 10/9. And look to see if we can do any simplifying first. We have a 5 in the denominator and a 10 in the numerator. Both are divisible by 5. So we'll simplify those a little bit, then multiply straight across. 16 times 2 is 32. 1 times 9 is 9. So we have 32 ninths, which is the same as 3 and 5 ninths. Now in example 3, we are dividing fractions. When dividing fractions, the key is you want to take the second fraction in the problem and change it to its reciprocal. So here in part A, we have 1/2 divided by 3/5. The reciprocal of 3/5 is 5/3. So we have 1/2 times 5/3. Now we can multiply straight across. 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 3 is 6. So the answer is 5/6. For part B, here we have a whole number, so we're writing it as an improper fraction, 8/1, divided by 4/5. Change the second number to its reciprocal, then multiply straight across. This becomes 8/1 times 5/4. We can do a little simplifying here. Both 8 and 4 are divisible by 4. So 2 times 5 is 10/1, which is just 10. Now we've dealt with each of these operations individually. We can also perform the order of operations on fractions. Like the example we have here, 1/2 plus 3/2 times 2/5. Now order of operations, if you think back to order of operations, you want to multiply first. So I'm just going to copy down the 1/2 plus, and you want to multiply 3/2 times 2/5. Now when doing this, see if you can simplify anything first. The 2's can cancel. So now we have 3 times 1 is 3, divided by 1 times 5 is 5. Now we have 1/2 plus 3/5, and we need a common denominator. The common denominator would be 10. 1/2 is the same as 5/10. 3/5 is the same as 6/10. So adding these together, we have 5 plus 6 is 11/10, which is the same as 1 1/10.
Trying to figure one out.